So this is Siemens. Obviously, a lot of transactions, but just here I can see a couple of spikes. So I'm interested in what that data is. So let's get rid of all the successful transactions, and we can see what that spike is. So there's a massive spike in errors and things. So let's we see over here, there's a bunch of data, but let's just focus on this specific spike. Let's drill in a bit further because we've got a 10-minute window. So we see this spike, and we say, okay, this spike, most of it is app connector is not available. There's some connection, service edge connection request timeout. But let's have a look at this. So we say applications. So there's a whole load of applications here that failed because of that. We could also say app connectors. Doesn't really help us because we know no app connectors could actually connect to it. So it's largely useless. But let's go back here, and we'll say by applications. This application failed. No application connector was available. So let's show in logs. It shows me 30,000 failed to this thing. App connector was unavailable. So it's great. These things failed. So let's get rid of the connector status code and click apply. And we can see, for that same time period, some were successful, 488. So that's the ones that were successful at the beginning and at the end, let's assume. And so if we look here, we can see service edge connection request timed out. A bunch of the failures, then it starts to become unavailable, and then we see all of these unavailable ones. So I can kind of start to infer some data. Let's just take a quick look at the successful ones. And the ones that were successful at the end, when it became suddenly available, were this connector group here, or this specific connector, SAP connectors Munich P DC2. That was that was the one that serviced this request. So we know that successful ones came from there. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard. Let's have a look at the errors. So at the beginning of the time period, the connector that was selected was actually the same one, SAP Connect Munich DC2. So those are the ones that were having service edge connection problems. And if we go past there, obviously, let's see if we can pivot this slightly. That 18 errors which were service edge not available. The rest of these are just unavailable because the app connector is not available. So I've got a little bit of data, but not a great deal. Now let's have a look at this application segment, the SAG application segment. It is associated with those SAG, SAP Munich P server groups, server group. So let's go and have a look at that. Administration, server groups. We're going to need to now. Hang on. Let's see if we can find SAP SAG. In fact, I should just add a filter. Munich. So it only includes this one connector group. So we can now go and look at that app connector group. And we've got a lot to search through here. So we'll say add filter name SAG underscore SAP. The Munich ones, right, which is these two. So we know that there are two connectors. Now let's have a look at these. Do they give us any data? Last software update was the February 28th. Last February 28th. So that doesn't give us very much. Let's actually have a look at those connectors themselves. So add a filter name SAG SAP Munich uptime public IP. So they come from behind the same public IP. Last connection 0202. So if we go back to these diagnostics, this successful started becoming successful at 0204. The errors. So it's about the same time. Now I can start to infer the data that if we go back to the app connectors here, I can infer that these connectors lost connection to the cloud, and that caused the applications to not be available. Now so it takes me a little bit of drill down to get to that data. Now could I find that somewhere else? If I look at the diagnostics and go to the trend data, there's nothing here that tells me anything about the health of connectors. So let's come over here and look at health, or more specifically the app connectors. So CPU utilization, memory utilization, tunnels. There's nothing in here that really gives me any indication. Let's SAG, SAP. I can't really search on this. SAG, SAP, EMS. MCH. So there, right. So we've got these ones here. Now let's kind of graph that data. New application tunnels. And let's look at this for the last 24 hours. Let's graph that data. So again, this doesn't really give me anything at the right level of granularity. In fact, it doesn't go back more than the last. I'm not sure what time zone this is in. This is yesterday. Yeah, this isn't helpful. Custom range. So let's go to today 0100 to 0300, because we saw that problem. So the graph again isn't quite granular enough. I mean, this is slightly lower here at 2 o'clock, but yeah, we see spikes. So doesn't really help us to really errors on the network interface, no errors, bytes received and transmitted. You know, again, we don't really see the data because it's trended over the 5-minute average and things like that. Memory utilization's fine, CPU utilization's fine. Interesting. CPU goes about 5%, so it's very low used. But essentially, if I try to diagnose that problem, I get a bit of a smoking gun. I can see the application stopped working, and the reason it stopped working is because the connector disconnected from the cloud. But then so it took me a little bit to get to that, but then it doesn't detail why it disconnected from the cloud. I've got no detail of that, or what I should then do with that data. Do I need to look at the connector and look at the logs as to why that failed? Do I need to look at the firewall logs? So it gets us a certain way along the path, but not to completion. Now, ZDX data could also help me say, okay, this application stopped working, but the smoking gun is actually in ZPA to say, why did this app connector go offline? And how do we triage that? So that's the thing that we really need to get from the trending and the diagnostics data to really help customers understand this. And then we can think about alerting based on these things. So we need to drive some intelligence into the troubleshooting as well as data analytics.